Sup guys, Xanderson977 here today to do Tokyo Ghoul episode 7 review. Now this episode of Tokyo Ghoul, was a very interesting episode, was a very how should I say it? It's a stepping stone that introduces the concepts, right? That at least for me personally I've had questions about, that attack coming out from the box. We found out that it's called Kagune and it's Ghoul's abilities. But not only that, but we even see the weapons that the humans use, right? Mado calls it Quincy or something like that, Quincy or something like that, right? Quincy. Let's call it Quincy for argument's sake. That Quincy weapon, right? The Quincy that he took out at the end when he was preparing to kill Ryoko, which is Hinami's mother, was actually the same Kagune that he took from her lover or Hinami's father. So that means that this Quincy weapon that they have, it's actually using Kagune abilities to fight off other ghouls, which in a way makes sense because these guys, they are just ordinary humans, right? They are not ghouls. So for them to be able to fight these seemingly superpower ghouls with all of these seemingly super strength, all these super abilities, we even get to find out that um Touka's powers, right, in terms of her ghoul abilities, her Kagune is actually called Ukaku, which is a high fast speed, fast movement type of Kagune that has a lot of speed behind its attacks, but because of that high degree of speed, it doesn't have a lot of stamina. So all of this interesting stuff. So a lot was revealed in this episode, and we see conflicts on both sides. The ghouls, they were mourning the loss of Miss Ryoko, and now Touka-chan came back wanting vengeance, wanting revenge, kill one of the humans. So it's equal bloodshed, it's equal fighting, it's equal losses on both sides, both for the humans and for the ghouls. And Kaneki is in the middle of all of this. Ironically, he's half human, half ghoul. So maybe his existence symbolizes the union that may eventually happen between humans and ghouls, if that is what actually happens. But overall, a lot of stuff this happened in this episode, and oh yes, Kaneki gets his mask, right? Actually, we've seen his mask, we've seen this mask that he's supposed to get. We've seen it in the opening animation for Tokyo Ghoul. So it's not like the very first time that we've seen it. We've actually seen it there before, but the first time in following the storyline that we see him with this mask. So this means that yes, he's ready to start to up or to step up to face off the human investigators. He's joining the fight, trying to fight them off and trying to make a difference instead of feeling powerless as he did when Ryoko lost her life. Now, I just start off with a summary of this chapter. Now, this episode of Tokyo Ghoul, right? It starts off where we left off with Hinami running through the streets, right? And I even noticed that at the end of that episode, Kaneki, something caught his attention, and in this episode it's revealed that it's actually he caught Hinami running, he caught Hinami running away from something. He caught her down, kneeling down on the pavement. He came over there, asked her what's up. Hinami was crying, telling him that her mother is in trouble. When they went to the scene, I'm sure that Kaneki has a pretty powerful ghoul ability, given that he now has the ability of the binge eater Rize, and I'm sure that she was a S-rated ghoul, so I'm sure that he has a pretty powerful Kagune, even though he doesn't necessarily consciously know how to use it. But if his life is in danger, it will come out to protect him. He has that ability, and I'm sure that he was definitely outnumbered in that situation, especially because of the fact that the Quincy, or the weapon that Mado had, it seems like this Quincy weapon is a very, it's no slouch, it's no bitch, it's a very powerful ghoul Kagune, in my opinion, the way how it seems, right? Because even Touka somewhat had some trouble with it in her fight with Mado because she was out of stamina, yes, but I believe it's a powerful Kagune. And when back to the summer when Kaneki and Hiname got to the scene, Kaneki was trying to hide their presences as much as possible, not to be noticed, because if they were noticed, it would have been over for them. They would have not only been outnumbered, but in terms of sheer firepower, they wouldn't have been able to defend themselves, well at all against these guys. Amon was there, Mado was there, along with two other human guys. I think it was, the two investigators that we later see in this episode. So he says that he basically, it's obvious that Mado, he doesn't consider ghouls as humans at all, or believe any of the ghouls to have any semblance of humanity in them, any semblance of feelings, emotions. He basically views them as trash or objects. He basically views them as just things to be exterminated. So I'm sure that this all comes from his personal experience with ghouls in his own lifetime. So that's his outlook in terms of ghouls. He has no qualms about killing them cold-bloodedly on the spot, whether adult, children, mother child situation, it doesn't matter. According to him, all ghouls, I'm guessing by his actions and by what he says, according to him, all ghouls must die. So he pulls out his quincy, or his weapon, and it turns out to be the Kagune of Ryoko's husband. We saw a hint of this ability when last episode when they took out that doctor guy, which is actually Ryoko's husband. So he took it out and she was surprised. She began crying, but then at the end of it all, she just basically gave up in a sense. By looking at the expression on her face, she was crying and she was just basically waiting to accept death. And I guess she got decapitated right there. And Kaneki saw everything, but he covered Hiname's eyes so that she wouldn't be burdened with the image of her mother being killed in such a gruesome way for the rest of her life. So after that point, the scene switches back over to Anteiku with everybody being there. Even Nishio, everyone was there along with Kaneki, and he explains to the old guy. I forgot his name, but I think it's Yamura is his name. I'm not sure. He explains to the old guy Yamura everything that happened, and Touka was the one who was, because she was away for a while, she came in there and she came upon them all there and she asked what's going on. She gets explained the situation, she finds out what happened, and she immediately bursts out into rage. She says that they should go after them, they should get their vengeance, and he's basically explaining to her that that cannot be the case, because if they begin acting on these doves as they call them, then more and more doves, more and more investigations, more and more investigators and more trouble will be knocking on their doorstep, which I believe is a right move that they decided to make. The 20th ward is naturally considered a quiet place, so if situations like these, where the doves or the investigators begin dying frequently or one after the other, it will be cause for concern on their part, and they will start sending in more doves, more investigators to deal with the ghoul, or the ghoul problem that's around. So I believe it's a good call on their part, but Touka, she didn't want to feel powerless like that in that situation. She wanted to have her vengeance, and she did. Later on in this episode, we see Amon and the two investigator guys. They go to this cook shop. Before they head out to the cook shop, right? Touka, she was looking at them and she realized that those are the guys that were the ones who were there or were responsible for taking Ryoko's life. She pinpoints them. I'm not sure how, because it was only Kaneki and Hiname who was the ones that told them, about everything. And I'm not sure if he even gave them the description of the dog themselves. Maybe he did, for security purposes. So either way, she pinpoints them. She realizes that it is them. She waits for them to finish eating, and while they were eating, that guy with glasses, he was basically excited over Amon, because it seems that Amon is a special type of investigator. He's a type of investigator that acts out in the line of duty. Like Mado, he actually faces the ghouls out there in the real world one-on-one, while these guys, they just seem like desperate, so they're not in immediate danger in their line of work. even though danger can come upon them, because they're fighting against ghouls by default because they're working with this organization. So they know that it's a possibility that ghouls will try to come after them to kill them. Regardless, Touka-chan waits for them to arrive to a certain point. She ambushes the glasses guy. He gets killed instantly, and then because Amon wasn't expecting an attack, he didn't have his weapon with him, his Quincy, as Mother would say. And because of that, Touka-chan arrived and she basically began kicking his ass. She began overpowering him easy, and we get the first explanation of what type of Kagune she has, as he explains. He identifies it as being a Okaku, which is a high speed type of movement type of ghoul, along with her ability to fight. And then Mado shows up, right? When Mado enters the fray with the same Kagune that he had when he killed Ryoko, he begins basically pushing Touka's buttons, because he realizes that Touka, this ghoul who's attacking them, is mostly attacking them now because of what happened yesterday, because of the fact that one of their ghouls was killed yesterday. So he began trash talking her to push her buttons so that she would exert her energy, while he just basically block and defend. And when she runs out of stamina, as was explained by him, this is a classic weakness for Okaku type ghouls. They have low stamina even though they have high pace, fast movements, right? When she began running out of stamina, then he began making his move, and he actually ended up injuring her. But push come to shove, she realized that she could no longer take them on because she was out of stamina, and she escaped. Now, upon her escaping, right, she Kaneki heard this tumbling in the kitchen. When he went over there, he realized that it was Touka-chan and she was injured. Mr. Yamura, I think, came in there, and he basically realized what she had done, and he said that basically because she decided to act on her own, she has to face the consequences, whatever that may mean. Maybe that means that they would no longer, whatever injuries she would have to look after them herself. They wouldn't treat those injuries for her because she directly went against his orders. But Kaneki, because he really does care for Touka, because Touka, took him in even though he had ghoul abilities, he was basically frightened of his ghoul abilities. He didn't know what to do, he didn't know where to turn. And Touka in a kind of way was there for him in that way, to introduce him, to show him that he has somewhere to go. So, he in this situation is displaying the same grace that he received from her, in a sense, for being there for him. So even though she was basically pushing him off and telling him not to be interfered, basically told her that regardless of whether the person is a human or ghoul, if you lose someone, you will miss them. So he basically told her that if she was to be gone, he would be heartbroken. And we see that rings a bell with Touka-chan, where she began to realize that maybe he really does care for her. And then he basically tells her that he no longer wants to be this helpless person. He wants to be able to help himself around. So Touka-chan agrees with him, and they end up going to this underground waterway place where I believe that Touka-chan most likely is laying a trap, and Kaneki is going to get involved. Towards the end of this episode, we see Kaneki return to Uta, and upon returning to Uta, the very last scene that we see is him donning his new mask. And I believe that is a new mask. The way how it's designed perfectly makes sense, because remember that for Kaneki, he's a one-eyed ghoul. So when he goes into his ghoul form with Kagune being out, it's not like the typical ghouls where both of their eyes has that red blood image that ghouls typically have. Only one of his eyes has that. So that unique trait, because not all ghouls have that unique one-eyed ghoul thing, right? That would actually make him be identifiable just by that mere circumstance, because it's very unique. As we found out episodes before, it's very unique for ghouls to have one eye, in other words, to be half human, half ghoul. It's very unique. So if he shows up to the dogs without any mask, and they see him being this kind of half human, half ghoul type of thing, they will always be able to identify him, even though if he was to cover the entirety of his face. So the mask, it covered the eye that didn't change when he went to his ghoul form, you know, to kind of cover his unique ability in that aspect. So I believe the mask is cool. I liked it very much. And also towards the end of this episode, we see Mado. He's trying to link together, you know, what's happening here. He has a lead that leads him to the same waterway place that we see Touka and Kaneki acting up on. So he basically figures out that it's some kind of trap set by the same rabbit girl, and you know that rabbit girl has some connection to the ghoul that he calls number 745, which is actually Hiname. She's right about that. But he realizes that it's a trap. He realizes that he is purposefully being lured there, and he's accepting the bait. He's accepting the challenge. So, you know, that's basically it for the episode. But overall, I thought it was a great episode of Tokyo Ghoul. We get more information about ghouls, their abilities. We even see, you know, the conflict that's going on both sides, the bloodshed that's happening not just for the ghouls but for the humans as well. You know, we even find out more about the different wards, what's going on. You know, so overall, I think it's a great episode of Tokyo Ghoul. So that's it. That's my review. Remember to rate, comment, subscribe. Sayonara.